Welcome to Movies to Fall Asleep To. I'm your host, Tristan Miller, and I don't sleep so good. That's why I'm turning to the best of the best, some of my favorite people, to talk about their comfort movies, in the hopes that maybe, just maybe, I'll get a little shut-eye. And I hope it helps you get some rest too. So close those eyes, and open those ears, and drift off while we talk about our favorite movies.
Today on the program, I'm joined by comedian and weird dad, Glen Tickle. Thank you for being on the podcast, Glenn.
Thanks for having me, friend.
Yeah. So you chose Buckaroo Banzai.
Yes.
There's a
Well,
subtitle.
Actually, it's The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, and I would have chosen it, but when you asked me if I wanted to do this, like, oh, you're gonna come on and talk about a movie, I assume Buckaroo Banzai. It's like, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I assume because yeah, I mean, having watched the film and your new special, Glen Tickle versus the World Crime League,
Yeah,
I now understand the glasses, the watermelon, the
yeah.
title. I was like, oh, okay. So it's almost like required reading for the course
It's
in
one
a
of those
way.
things where there's so many. It's mostly like visual references to the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what I would have loved was to do an hour of stand-up comedy about my favorite movie, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, across the world, across the eighth dimension. But you can't. Like, as a guy who does a lot of jokes about Star Wars and Jurassic Park,
Mm-hmm.
those are, even if you haven't seen Jurassic Park, you know it's a movie about a theme park where dinosaurs get out. Like, that's usually all I need you to know for the joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it might get a little specific and I might lose you on some tags or whatever, but if you know they made a movie where dinosaurs get out in a theme park, you're 90% of the way there.
Yeah.
Um, Almost no one has seen The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, and most of the people that I talk to who have seen it don't like it, and it lost a lot of money,
Yeah.
and that
You
is
know,
why they never made Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime League, so I had to.
yeah,
Um,
you stepped
but
in.
yeah, my red glasses, I ordered like the week I first saw this movie. I was like, those are great. I need them.
That leads me to my first question. When did you first see this movie?
Within the past 5 years.
Oh,
It
really?
was yeah, it was shortly after my second daughter was born. Whenever Ready Player One, a couple
Mm,
weeks after that came out in theaters, because I saw it when it was in theaters, but not. I didn't rush to the theater to see.
I would say no one really seems to have done
Yeah,
that.
I got there so in however many weeks it was in theaters, probably one of the last ones.
Yeah.
And there's a reference to it in that
Mm-hmm.
movie, which isn't very good. But at one point he wears one of the suits that Buckaroo has on, and the other character is like, "Is that the suit from Buckaroo Banzai?" And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Yeah," and he was like impressed that she knew the suit, and I'm like, "I've heard of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it. That suit does rule, actually. Like, I like that a lot."
Yeah.
And then my daughter wasn't sleeping. She was like a couple weeks old at that point.
Well,
Was
she was new at it. She didn't know how.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 40 and still am not good at it, but it's the middle of the night. It's like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm up with her trying to get her to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing about having like really young kids is you can watch whatever you want when they're around.
Yeah.
Like nothing's gonna register to the 3 week old baby.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just scrolling through streaming services to find something to watch, and then I saw Buckaroo Banzai. I was like, oh, that's that movie with the cool suit that I'd heard of but never had a chance to see. So I'll watch it now. And 15 minutes into the movie, I was like, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life. I can't wait to watch this 400 more times this week. I love it so much because honestly, the moment I was like, this is my favorite movie, was it's like I think it's genuinely like I think 12 minutes into the movie because it's the concert scene.
Yeah.
So this is after Buckaroo has driven a car through a mountain, performed brain surgery, and then is playing a concert in New Jersey. And in the middle of it, he shuts like mid-song. He's like, "Stop, everyone, shut up," because one person isn't having a good time.
Hmm.
And as a comedian, I've never
Yeah.
related to anything harder than like,
Yeah.
yeah, I also want to know why this one person, like everyone else is having a good time at this
Hmm.
show, but this person clearly isn't. And I would love to have everyone else shut up so I can figure out why. And it does genuinely kind of fall apart from there as a movie. But
I should say
uh,
so, yes.
yeah, it is a thing that I love that I understand is flawed.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I talk to, because they hear me talk about it so much, so like, I tried to watch it, man. It doesn't make any sense. I was like, no, at no point did I say it does.
That's
But
fair
the
counterpoint.
the best way to experience it, I think, is at 4 a.m. when you're sleep deprived because your new infant daughter won't go to bed.
I could absolutely agree with that. Yeah. Um, I kind of had assumed that it was like you had seen it when it had come out in 1980 or whatever, 1990 or whatever,
1984.
84. I have
No,
I have no grasp.
I would have been a wee baby.
Okay.
But no, like a lot of the people that I know who do also like this movie, it is like
Yeah.
a fond memory from, you know, 40 years ago, not
Hmm.
a thing they found recently and decided was the peak of American cinema.
And you're not wrong to say it. I'll say this as well. I've been meaning to watch this film for 10 years
Yeah.
because I listened to John Lithgow's autobiography when it came out.
Hmm.
Drama, a memoir. And he talks about it. I'm like, that plot sounds really interesting. I like Jeff Goldblum. I'd love to
Yeah.
see him and them interact, and they don't. They don't have a single scene
No.
together, which stinks. But I was like, it was always in the back of my mind, and then finally watching it, I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I watched it with my family, and they had
Hmm.
a very hard time following it. Um,
Yeah.
but also they were on their phones. No, but
Kids these days,
yeah,
you
I
know?
know. And listen, I have this bit that I've been tooling around, which is like having stayed with my family enough lately that my mom's now the teenage boy. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Just jacking it a bunch.
Glenn, yes. No, she's like constantly asking, can I play Mario Kart? And she's on
Yeah.
her phone all the time, and I'm like, Jesus, is this what a teenager is like? But
Probably.
probably you'll find out soon enough, I'm sure.
It's coming up. My oldest is 10, so any day
Oh,
now she'll be 16 and mad at me.
oh, oof. I saw a Tumblr post ages ago saying, you're an adult when in The Little Mermaid, she says, Daddy, I'm 16. I'm an adult. And you're like, no.
Oh, sweetie,
You're like, no, 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 not at all. But I found this movie pretty easy to watch, actually. I didn't find it particularly confusing. The main conflict makes sense. There's
yeah,
hidden
the beginning,
aliens. I
I
get it.
think the beginning is a little overwhelming. And genuinely,
Yeah.
the first time I saw it, I didn't know which character was Buckaroo Banzai for a while
Well, they don't show
because,
his face for a minute.
yeah, he's got the hood on in
Hmm.
surgery with Jeff Goldblum, and you spot Jeff Goldblum right away because he's Jeff Goldblum.
Hmm.
You can't hide that dude in any, like,
Nor does
he's
he want to be hidden.
no, he stands out. Like, I just watched Earth Girls Are Easy again because I make bad decisions, and it's like, oh yeah, you can put him in a full body alien suit, and you're like, oh yeah, it's Jeff Goldblum. Uh,
That was on the recommended after we watched Buckaroo Banzai. They're like, hey,
yeah,
maybe
that's
you'd like.
probably why, because
Mhm.
I watch it so much. It's like, you want to watch, you just like weird stuff from the mid '80s, I guess. And it's like, no, just kind of this one thing. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I probably just because I used to be on Comedy Central a lot when I was a kid.
Earth
Earth
Girls
Girls
Are
Are
Easy.
Easy, yeah.
Mm.
So I know I've seen it, and I'm like, oh, I forgot it was a musical.
It's a
It is,
musical.
Yeah, but like only a little bit. It's not like a
Mm,
full on one. It is just uh there's a song and dance number pretty early on. I think there's a couple. It kind of just washed over me
mm,
without
mhm,
sinking in.
mhm.
Um but yeah, Jeff Goldblum's great in it. He stands out right away. Peter Weller uh of course plays Buckaroo Banzai, but he's got like a surgical hood on
Mhm,
in the first time you see him. Then he's got a motorcycle helmet on.
mhm,
So it's not until like the third scene with him where it's like, oh, that's Buckaroo, that
mhm.
guy. Because you look on, if you see the poster or whatever, I genuinely thought Jeff Goldblum was Buckaroo Banzai just looking at the poster because he's the one dressed as a cowboy,
Yeah,
and like Buckaroo is a cowboy dude. Like
the
that's
most out of place cowboy costume I've ever seen in my life.
it's great because it's the same one that Pee Wee Herman wears when
Oh,
he's
really?
trying to disguise himself. They had the same costume designer, I forget her name, worked on Pee Wee's Big Adventure and Buckaroo Banzai.
That's so good.
So the very end of the movie where they're doing like the dance walk through the LA River, he is dressed as Pee Wee Herman. It's a Glen plaid suit. He's got a bow tie and white shoes. He's just
Oh,
full on Pee Weeing it,
that's so
and
good.
it's like it has to have been on purpose, you know?
It must
Like
have been.
there's
My bike. Ooh,
yeah, like you could
that
chalk it
anything?
up. My I hate when people are like, "Oh, my headcanon is this." It's like, well, but I genuinely believe that The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai is the movie that the studio makes about Pee Wee Herman's life that they watch at the drive-in at the end
Yes,
of the movie.
yes.
It is this film.
That is a fascinating idea. Huh. Here's another thing you've caught me in, Glenn. I've never seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I I
I
I
know,
believe
right?
you, but like
How, right?
that's the part that I find hard. Like it's I don't doubt you for a second. I take you at your word, but how? How
I've
have
s-
you not?
I've seen several clips of it. My parents love it, but I don't know. It just never came up. And of course, Paul Rubens recently passed away, and they were playing it in cinemas, and we were trying to find a time to go see it, but then it
Yeah.
just didn't work out. I really want to. It looks really funny.
It was playing at a drive-in near me like
Hell yeah.
the
Love the
month
drive-in.
before he died,
Mm,
and I didn't know about it until the day after, and I was like so pissed that I didn't go. And then he died a couple weeks later, and a couple other places were playing it, but then I was like traveling and on the road and stuff, so I couldn't
mm-hmm,
go see it. And I'm still mad that I've seen it in theaters
mm-hmm.
before, but I don't think I've ever seen it at a drive-in, which like isn't like they make a movie about Pee Wee in the movie, and they all the
Totally.
characters meet up at a drive-in. It's like, yeah, the drive-in would be the best place to watch this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have all if I saw it after he died, I would have been crying the whole time.
Yeah,
But still wanted to go.
yeah. That absolutely makes sense. Um, you've said you've seen this movie so many times.
Yeah, genuinely, I couldn't count.
Okay.
Like you
So,
said, like people be like, "Oh, I've seen that movie 100 times," and like they mean five.
mm-hmm,
Uh, Easily, genuinely, more than like triple digits, absolute no question. Because for a while there, I would just put it on every night. Like not sit there and watch the whole thing, but like as I'm going to bed, just
mm-hmm.
put it on and just like watch it until I fall asleep. I watch it on the road like
Yeah.
a lot. Not con like I've seen it in hotel in many hotel rooms across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I forget I brought it up on a podcast recently, but I admitted that I have a USB drive on my keychain, which is just like I used to work as like a computer lab aide in college,
Mm-hmm.
so it is just like a habit of like it's always good to have a thumb drive
Mm-hmm.
just as a matter of course.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have one of my keys all the time, and the only thing that I keep on it is a digital copy of Buckaroo Banzai in case of emergencies. Tristan,
It's like no allergy information at all, but
oh, then what are they gonna? what situation are they going to need to pull information from my thumb drive on my keys? It is just like, I don't know. What if I'm in a hotel room and I don't have my laptop or whatever, and you got to plug it right into the back of the hotel TV and hope it reads it.
It's very in case of break glass.
Yeah, and it's genuinely I will like give it to people. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen it. I'm like, just copy it from the thumb drive. It's like the nuclear codes, but it's a movie from 40 years ago that lost millions of dollars.
Yeah, I want to know about that. Do you know the specifics, or should I bring up like the Wikipedia?
Like the hard numbers.
Yeah, or like I'm gonna put in Buckaroo.
There is a Western called Buckaroo.
Buckaroo Banzai.
So it's not addressed in the movie, but Buckaroo's dad was a Japanese man who was just like loved Westerns and like stories of the American West. So that is why they wanted to name their son Buckaroo.
Budget 17 million. Box office 6.3.
Way less than 17.
Oof, baboof.
Yeah.
Oof, baboof.
So it was directed by W.D. Richter, who wrote Big Trouble in Little China, a much more successful film.
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
I don't know if it was at the box office, like in its time, I don't know if it was successful, but it has lasted in the general, zeitgeist a lot better than Buckaroo did.
Yeah.
But that was apparently a script that had been like going around. I think that was also originally like a Western. And it got like rewritten so many times, and then once W.D. Richter got his hand on the ball, he's like, no, this guy don't make it a Western, set it in modern times. This guy's a truck driver. Also, all Asian people are magical. And they're like, yeah, man, this sounds great. Let's get Kurt in here.
Wearing my James Hong t-shirt. That movie's so good. Yeah, that absolutely tracks. It kind of also, this Buckaroo Banzai kind of reminds me of almost like Speed Racer 2, of like there's so much going on all the time. It's like,
yeah, and that is it. It is. They're similar in that they are both weird things that I really like that most people don't seem to know what I'm talking about. But
I haven't seen Speed Racer in a very long time, but a now defunct friend of mine, it was his favorite movie, so I've seen that at least double digits. More like a Nanja. Great line from John Goodman.
Yeah. The movie's really good. I like if I was homesick, I remember like that was when I could catch Speed Racer on television. The old cartoon.
So this is definitely like an actual fall asleep to movie. Like not just this
Absolutely.
is my favorite. What about it lulls you to sleep?
Part of it is just like I've seen it so many times. And I've done this with different movies throughout my life of just like, this is the movie I will fall asleep to for the next 6 months or whatever. And it is because it's like I really like it. I want to watch it all the time. But I've also now, if it's something I've seen 20 times in the past month, like it is kind of hard to sit there and like engage with it in the way you typically do with a movie. So it's like that's the best time to put it on, is like as you're falling asleep. I remember in high school I would like do that with Kevin Smith movies. I would just like put Clerks on and then fall asleep. And I'm trying to think of, there was probably like a gap there from when I started doing this with Buckaroo Banzai to the last movie I would like watch this much had been a good long time. But yeah, I just love it so much. But it also helps as a falling asleep movie because at a certain point it kind of stops being very good. And
yeah,
which is, so they had the cinematographer for Blade Runner was shooting this movie, and then
Okay.
uh, I do not know why, but they didn't after a while, and they got another cat to come shoot the
Yeah.
rest of the movie, and it is so clear when like which scenes are which,
Mm-hmm.
because like that concert scene looks great. Uh,
Yeah.
it looks, I mean, it looks like it's 1984. I was gonna say it looks cool, but it looks like the 1984 version of cool, where there's
Yeah.
like enough. There's really not enough extras. They're all doing weird dances that were probably very hip at the time, but it's like goofy now. But
Mhm.
like the way it is shot, it looks cool. And
Yeah.
then after there's like a motorcycle chase scene, I would say after about that, it just starts looking like an episode of the A-Team, which I
Mm.
love, is one of my favorite shows, but is, it is
Yeah.
an NBC hour action drama from the 80s. So
Yeah.
not known for like looking like everything just looked like flat and a little goofy. Um,
A lot
they
of
did
flat
not
lighting.
spend very much of the $17 million on like effects or making things look great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in like the climactic scene, there's like a spaceship battle that just looks, it's awful.
It's so bad.
It is like 50s sci-fi plastic models on string.
Oh my god.
Just it's a mess, and it's just like I guess they just ran out of money
If
by the time they got to that part.
because like I remember what I was watching it and the Buckaroo shooting at John Lithgow
Hmm.
and you don't like the analog would obviously be that like escape from the Death Star scene in A New Hope where they're like shooting the TIE fighters and the music is swelling. But you don't see any lasers. You don't see him moving around. He's just like kind of facing the camera going, "Did I hit him? What's going on?"
Yeah,
It's very technically limited. I will say this, I like the design of the spaceships. That like
those
kind of organic looking thing. I love that.
yeah, all the Electroid like stuff looks cool until it's like moving.
Yes.
Where the design, I really liked the design of the Electroids, the aliens in the movie. And I do think they did like a solid costume and makeup job for that. Because like Dan Hedaya plays one of the Electroids. So at depending on the circumstances, you either on screen see it's Dan Hedaya, Christopher Lloyd, and I always forget the dude's name. Uh he was in Death to Smoochie.
Oh
He's been
yeah.
in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
He's super tall.
I'll look them up
Um,
while you try to get it on your
but
own.
all three of those guys are wearing like rubber monster masks for half the movie. But it's so clear which one's which. Like one, because the
Mm.
one dude's way taller than anybody else, so he stands out. But like they did a good job with these masks because when Dan Hedaya puts on the monster mask, you're like, oh yeah, that one's Dan Hedaya, clearly. Because then they go to like the nest where the other aliens are at one point, and those are like more just generic, like the cheap versions of those masks, but like the three main aliens like look pretty good like when they're
Oh
all
yeah.
aliened up. There's
Um,
like sipping on batteries at one point, which I really like.
Vincent Chevalier.
Yes,
Um,
the late Vincent Chevalier.
yes. And then also a fun thing for me was seeing Clancy Brown
Mm-hmm.
in the flesh,
Rawhide.
and not just hearing his sonorous tones.
He is in not enough of Ahsoka, by the way.
Yeah, he plays a character where that he voices in Rebels. So
Okay,
that's like
so
a little
this
cameo
this
kind of
ties in with
thing.
my main issue with Ahsoka is I didn't watch Rebels
Mm-hmm.
or the Clone Wars, and I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of that show was like, oh well, you've obviously watched all seasons of these two other shows. Like, Haven't seen an episode, man. I do not understand what's going on. You have not established who any of these characters are in relation to each other. I only know who Ahsoka is because she came and hung out with Grogu that one time. That's my point of reference for
Oh
this
boy,
lady. And
that must have
it was
been a
a
nightmare.
slog.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, yeah, if I knew who these people were, man, I'd be so on board for this, but I don't, and I don't want to learn.
Glenn, I'll say this. I knew who everyone was, and I was not on board with a lot of it.
Oh,
So,
all right.
you
But
know,
I was so excited when I saw Clancy Brown in the first episode and then
yeah.
never again. And then
Yep.
he's not in it for and it's like,
He was in on
you're gonna
Mandalorian too.
don't show up, don't present me with Rawhide himself and then not utilize him.
Yeah. I when I saw him in something, and then I was like, I was aghast that that was Mr. Krabs.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, what? He's a very good actor. He's in
He's
an episode of
tremendous.
Mandalorian too. He plays when they're all on that prison ship. He's
Okay.
one of the guys with the horns on his heads.
I
And
might have
that,
missed him that one.
so he's been in like, he's played, and then he voiced a guy in Clone Wars too. So he's been in like a lot of Star Wars TV,
He's
which I think
great.
is
He should be
very
in
cool.
all things all
Yeah.
the time.
Big ups to Clancy. But yeah, I not to get too deep in the weeds because we will have to return to Buckaroo Banzai. I'll say this about Ahsoka. Maybe you'll get him next time. Get him next time, champ.
Yeah.
I just, it's hard. I'm excited that the landscape is changing so that Star Wars goes back into a movie theater where I personally believe it belongs. That is what I will say. And then I'll also say this. I would be so on board to be in a Star Wars TV show. Please give me a role. That is what I will be two-faced about it, and I don't care.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Let me write an Ewok series.
Ewoks.
That is like that's if I ever get a meeting about a Star Wars thing and they're like, "What would you do?" I'm like, Ewok documentary.
Ewok documentary?
No subtitles.
Oh,
They're
okay.
just going about their day. There's a Star Wars version of David Attenborough
I was
following
gonna
him
say.
around.
Oh, that's so good.
And
What
he's
character would be good for that?
yeah, it would
Oh,
be
I mean,
it'd be
3PO seems obvious.
too obvious and
Too
annoying.
obvious. And too, yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
a bit much,
I
that's
remember when Waze started adding like celebrity voices. At one point, they added R2D2 and C3PO as options. I was like, yeah, that sounds. I would love it if C3PO would tell me to turn left. But there's like 8 jokes, and it's just the same ones
Oh,
over and over again. I
no.
was like, oh no, 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 you
No,
did this the worst way possible. I just want him saying regular direction stuff, but I want it I want it to be C3PO. I
Yeah.
don't need him making the same 4 jokes over and over
Oh,
again.
that's brutal. That's brutal,
Yeah.
man. Ugh. Um, I'm so I assume you like the Ewoks cartoon series.
No.
No, you don't?
No, it's bad.
No, you don't? Ugh.
It's
You just like Ewoks as a concept?
I like the Ewoks and Jedi and I like the 2 TV movies. I've watched the show. It's like a fine 80s cartoon, but those
Yeah.
are all bad. Like I
Yeah,
also,
it does
I
feel
have
like Smurfs.
fond associations to He-Man, but I'm not going to tell you it's a
Mhm.
good narrative. It's
Sure.
nonsense to sell toys.
I am livid with myself about Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor because
Why?
I had a DVD copy of both of them and
Yeah.
I lent it to a friend who he's like, "Oh, these were the main Star Wars movies I watched growing up."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "I haven't seen these in forever." I'm like, "Oh, here, I'll just, And then we were doing a play, and then he got another gig, and I've never seen him again or that DVD sits. And they're very hard to come by, apparently. Well, now
I
they're on
got
Disney Plus, but
yeah, I had a VHS copy of Caravan of Courage that my wife got me when we were dating. That our VCR did eat at one point, and I was devastated because then when I went to get another one like on eBay, it was like $200.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you spend $200 on this? She's like, oh, I absolutely did not. She's like, I love you, but I'm not getting you a $200 VHS tape. But for whatever reason, between her getting it and then me trying to replace it, the market value skyrocketed.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I think I do have them on DVD somewhere.
Yeah, they're pretty fun. I remember getting them from the video store, and that was quite good. I will say that there's kind of this element between kind of a lot of the stuff we've been talking about of the Ready Player One of it all. I feel like that might, because it's referenced in that, and that might have gotten its popularity as well. One of the things that really fucked me off with Simon Pegg. This is a quick sidebar. I have beef with all sorts of British people.
You got weird celebrity beefs, and I love all of them.
Mm-hmm. With Simon Pegg, and he's since come around on this, and he's apologized because he really hated the prequels, and he was really dunking on them when they came out, which is understandable.
Well, they're bad.
I won't engage with that, Glenn. But he had seen the Ewok films in cinemas because they were released in cinemas in Britain, just as like another Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're, as in my opinion, in terms of quality, far worse than at least half of the prequels. So that always bothered me.
Wait, he is saying that, or you are saying that?
He says that, like, he's like, I love these movies growing up, but I hate these new ones. I'm like, they're the same to me. They feel the same in terms of quality. You just don't like the new ones because you're old now, is how I feel about Simon Pegg not liking them.
I guess. I mean, the prequels are pretty bad. And I mean, Caravan of Courage, a lot of it is like done in voiceover because they're like, they didn't have much of a story. So like, I don't know, just put them in the suits and just roll the cameras. We'll figure it out in the edit. And so like some of it doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean,
Battle for Endor is like legit terrifying. Like as a child, it was genuinely so scary to me. The guy in like,
Wish?
Yeah, the witch, and then the guy in like what is just essentially a orangutan mask.
Yeah.
I would run out of the room screaming as a child when that dude came on. And you rewatch that, you get Wilford Brimley. That one is excellent.
Okay, well, I'll have to watch them because I haven't seen them in a while. I've only seen them, I think, twice each. Because then my DVD copy.
Yeah, because somebody stole your DVDs. Yeah. I've seen them both way more than that.
And then he moved to Los Angeles, and before he left, I was like, "Hey, man, you still have my DVDs of this?" And he goes, "I have moved twice since. I have no idea where they are." And I'm like, "Dude, this sucks. I hate every part of this interaction."
I hope he doesn't get cast in anything.
Yeah, he's doing all right.
I think you mentioned he was an actor.
Yes, he is. But back to Buckaroo Banzai.
Yes.
So you do find it comforting, and the initial viewing wasn't like coming home, or was it? Like you didn't feel immense comfort from the first viewing?
No, I absolutely did. Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, it was because the first couple scenes, it was like I genuinely don't understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, the concert scene completely won me over. And then the rest of the movie, I was like, all right, it did kind of take a turn when they're in the swamp, but I'm still when John Parker crash lands, and there's the two like hunters.
Oh yes.
And then the New Jersey State Trooper.
Mm-hmm.
That is the A-teamist looking scene in the whole where it's like, man, Blade Runner guy would not have lit this like that. It would have looked gorgeous.
Yeah.
But it's it has enough in it where there are dips in quality of like narrative, but there's also just great lines in it throughout. I think this incorrectly sometimes gets categorized as like a satire of a sci-fi movie or like a sci-fi comedy, and I'm like, no, this was not done with the intent of comedy. This was a serious endeavor, and I mean, there's jokes in most sci-fi
Yeah.
stuff along the way. It is not like like Star Wars has jokes. It's not a comedy. But this movie, like, at any time I was like, yeah, I don't know if this part's very good. Then somebody says the funniest thing you've ever heard in your life, if you're me. Like, there's a press conference at one point and somebody interrupts and tells Buckaroo, they're like, the president's on the phone, and he goes, the president of what? And it's like, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
but I
solid.
think I've had a couple opportunities to like go to fan expo events and stuff that I knew Peter Weller would be at, and part of it was like during the pandemic I don't really want to go to a fan expo,
Of course.
but also like I don't really care about, like, I don't think Peter Weller is Buckaroo Banzai, like,
Yeah. You're looking at the thing as the sum of its parts, not the individual bits.
yeah, like
Yeah.
meeting Peter Weller would be cool, but I'm like, I don't want to go to an arena with 10,000 people to do it.
Yeah.
But the more I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I probably should have just gone, like said hi to the dude. But he's talked about it where he's like, I didn't understand that movie at all. He's like, I didn't know what was going on. And everyone's like, oh, he's so good in it because he's like so cool and detached. I'm like, no, he's just doing. Humphrey Bogart had a line years ago of like about acting where he's like, sometimes if you don't know how to say a line, you just got to say it out loud. And that's what I think Peter Weller's doing
Yeah.
for almost the whole movie,
Yeah,
where he's just saying the words on the page, and it
Also,
works
I think
to his credit.
I think the movie is better for it because here's my thing. If I had seen a successful version of this film, it would not be nearly as charming as it is.
Yeah, they wanted Tom Hanks.
They wanted Tom Hanks.
They wanted Thomas Hanks to be
Thomas
Buckaroo
Hanks.
Banzai. I don't know how far that ever got. Like, I don't know if that
Ooh.
was ever even close to happening, but that was who they were going for.
Wow.
And look out, Thomas, if you're listening, you do great work, kid. I love it all, but I don't want to see the Tom Hanks version of this movie.
I
You
don't
know,
know. Yeah.
Buckaroo has funny lines, but the fact that the character, or I'm assuming Peter Weller, don't realize they're supposed to be funny lines is what makes them work for me. Like, in the scene where it's not, he's not like cracking wise. He's not like saying things to lighten the mood.
Yeah.
I think it's 1984, so I think this might just be me looking at it in 2023, but I do think Buckaroo is coded as autistic, and in a way where, like, so in 1984, people didn't really know what that was. They're just like, he's super genius. He clearly doesn't understand social cues. He just says weird things. And like his funniest line in the movie, so after they kidnap his dead wife's twin sister, Penny Pretty, um, so John Lithgow, John Warfarin, is holding Penny Pretty. He calls Buckaroo to like demand that he brings him the oscillation overthruster, like the MacGuffin of the movie, the thing that lets you travel across dimensions. And at one point, like as a proof of life thing, John Lithgow puts Penny on the phone, and Buckaroo says, "Penny, get off the phone," as if she's just like interrupting the conversation. And it's like, it's not played for a laugh. It is just like stone cold the funniest thing I've ever seen in a movie, where it's like he's just, the bad guy's he just wants you to know your girlfriend's alive, and you're like, Penny, get off the phone. I love it so much.
That's
And it's
very
like if
good.
Tom Hanks was doing it and it's like supposed to be like a funny little bit, I don't think it works. I don't
Okay.
think it is. I don't think it's as funny.
I think it would have been like, oh, Penny, get off the phone. Like it would have
Yeah,
been
it
like that.
would have been too much
Too
juice there,
big.
Thomas.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's very funny, and I did laugh at that line as well. It's I think that's an interesting. I think an interesting 2023ism of being autistic or autism coded or however you want to say it. I
Yeah.
think that
Maybe not
absolutely
coded because that I feel like that implies they were like doing it
doing
on
it. You can
purpose.
read the text as if he is autistic, which is, I
Yeah,
think, a good thing. Um, in as much as that makes he's the coolest fucking guy on the planet.
he
That's
is.
great.
The other thing
Oh,
I love is that everyone in the movie knows who Buckaroo Banzai is,
yeah.
including aliens from outer space. They're like,
Well,
"Oh,
I,
well, we need there's trouble on Earth. We got to recruit the help of
Buckaroo.
Buckaroo Banzai." He
Um,
steals the motorcycle at one point, and somebody's
mhm.
like, "Hey, you can't take that." And he's like, "Oh, it's Buckaroo Banzai." It's like, "Yeah, oh, that's fine then. Enjoy the motorcycle."
um, there's a comic book in the movie, and this is based off of a
Yes.
comic book, right?
No.
No,
Feels like it should be. It is not.
feels like it should be because there's a lot of stuff where they just kind of pick up and like you're saying about Ahsoka, you're like, oh yeah, you know how his wife's dead, and you're like,
Yeah.
what? And the fact
Well,
that
that's
there's that line where he goes, and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
yeah.
It's like so pointed to the audience of like, this is not important
We're
to
not.
the
There's not
plot.
going to be a flashback. Don't worry about it. Just accept that it happened. Because the reasoning for this is they'd been working on the script for a long time. So it's W.D. Richter and Earl Mac Rauch was the writer. They've been like working together to develop this character, like really thinking they're like, we got a franchise on our hands here, bud. I imagine a lot of high fiving going on while they're working on scripts, but it kept getting like pushed back, or they wouldn't get the money, or they would have to leave to go work on something else and then come back to it. So by the time this movie gets greenlit, they're like, all right, here's $17 million. Go turn Buckaroo Banzai into the next big franchise. They had a lot of stories about this guy. And when they're like, well, should we do like an origin story? They're like, no, just pick one from the middle. And it's like how George Lucas pretends Star Wars happened, where
Mm-hmm.
he's like, oh yeah, I always wanted to start with, trade disagreements. Like, shut up. No, you didn't. You started on Tatooine. We all know you did, and then you went back from there.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously what you did. No one believes you when you said that this was part four. It
Oh,
was the only one you could get made.
well, no,
Um,
it's the one I could get audience to go to. The
yeah,
other ones, they were too boring, and then
yeah,
when Disney bought them, they didn't want to use my scripts because those were too boring too. You know.
correct. I don't agree with Disney on a lot of stuff, but I'll give them that one. And
Damn.
yeah, it was genuinely they're like, I don't know, this one seems like the most fun to make. Let's just do this one. So when I was watching it the first time, I was like, I can't wait to watch these other ones because it does like it really feels like the fourth movie in a series
Mm-hmm.
about this guy. And you're like, oh, I can't wait to go back and watch the other ones and figure out all this other stuff that they said happened. And then you find out that there's nothing. There
Nothing.
is not. There is Earl Mac Rauch wrote a novelization of the movie
Sick.
that has like some additional details. There was a deleted scene because this was 1984, so the studio was like, no, this is if this is going to be our next big franchise, this needs to be more like Star Wars. So I think they
Mm-hmm.
pushed uh like a lot. They're like, it needs to have a spaceship battle. So I think that's why it looks so bad, is it's just like rushed
Mm.
on at the end. The opening crawl about
Mm-hmm.
Buckaroo that doesn't actually add anything because it's like we don't know who this guy is. So
Yeah.
this isn't it's not establishing anything. There was the deleted scene which is on the special edition. You can find it on YouTube too. It is like old home movies of young Buckaroo with his parents and Dr. Hikita, as they are basically doing like an early version of the jet car experiment, like where he drives the car through a mountain. That's his parents' experiment. Like that's what they were doing when they got blown up in the experiment by Hanoi Shan, the leader of the World Crime League, who gets cut out of the movie entirely. He is like the emperor. So
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
John Lithgow is like, to put it in Star Wars terms, John Lithgow's Darth Vader, Hanoi Shan's the emperor,
yeah.
and they just took him out completely. Like any reference to him,
That's
uh
fascinating.
yeah, and it's the home movies are narrated by Clancy Brown as Rawhide, and it adds like so much context that is just completely, it's not like it's addressed later, it's just gone because they took it out. So you see young Buckaroo, his parents are doing this experiment. There's young Dr. Hikita, who then you see him young again later because he's doing the same experiment with Emilio Lizardo, who gets possessed by John Warfarin. And it like it establishes what this experiment is, why he's doing it. Like the first however many times I watched it was without that scene. Then I watched it and I'm like, this is so much better. Like when if you get like the special edition on DVD or Blu-ray, watch it with that scene first, and it like genuinely sets it up in a way that explains so much of who this character is. Like he gets in the jet car, you see that part, and he's got he's holding a leather briefcase for some reason. It's his dad's briefcase. You see it in that flashback. Like that is why he's got it in the experiment, because he misses his parents and like he's trying to continue their work. They took it out, and it's just, I don't know, he thought it would be cool to drive a car through a mountain, and it's like there's no emotion left in it after at that point.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm not saying it makes it incredible, like it doesn't fix all the problems with the movie,
Yeah, yeah.
but it fixes at least the opening scene of what is happening. Like you don't know, it's just people in the desert. There's a lot of talk about whether or not Buckaroo is going to show up. Then you see two people doing brain surgery. It's not clear if one of them is Buckaroo. And then he shows up, but he's got a motorcycle helmet on. So you don't even realize it's the same guy from before. But if you see it in the context of like, it's basically Clancy Brown explaining who Buckaroo is, explaining the experiment that he watched his parents get killed by the leader of the World Crime League, Hanoi Shan. And then it cuts to years later. Now he's an adult. He's trying to continue his parents' work. His mom is Jamie Lee Curtis, who gets cut out of the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's insane.
You just like see her waving in one of the scenes. She was like, I think she was dating somebody on the crew at the time. So she was like there, and they're just like, can you go wave at the camera and be Buckaroo's mom?
So funny.
Yeah.
That's
And
wild.
It's the thing when I talk about this movie with people, once you start listing who's in it, that's when people are like, how have I not seen this movie? Where it's like, yeah, it's Christopher Lloyd, John Lithgow, Peter Weller, Jeff Goldblum, Ellen Barkin, and everyone's like, Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad has a brief appearance as an orderly. And everyone's like, how have I not seen this movie? And it's like, oh, it's because it bombed so hard that it was hard to find copies of for a while. Even now, like it is streaming sometimes.
Yeah, we watched it on, I think, Tubi.
So like it gets added and removed from various streaming services month to month. Yeah. In a way that I don't think most movies do.
Yeah, they generally sit one place. I think I remember from John Lithgow's book, that's one of the reasons he got the Third Rock from the Sun role. They're like, oh, you've played a crazy alien before.
Yeah.
We love it. Just do that, but no terrible accent this time, please.
He's taken a lot of flack for that accent, and I've heard him talk about it, and he's like, I think it was the costume person or like somebody who worked with him on that movie was Italian,
Yes.
and he's just doing that guy's voice. And he's
Yes.
like, you're gonna have to take my word for it because you don't know him, but it's a pretty dead on impression actually. And it's like I believe you, man. Yeah, like uh his like Mussolini speech towards the end of the movie
Yeah,
is so funny
it is.
to his assembled horde of aliens.
I think
Uh
it's so good because they give him no reaction. It's just
yeah,
like dead space. So he's just like ranting at nobody. It's so funny and so good.
they're just like eating 1984 Doritos and just barely listening, and he is really selling that speech.
He is.
And it's so funny because it's not like the level of energy he is bringing to it. You expect he's clearly standing in front of 10,000 adoring fans, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like 20 guys who couldn't care less
They're
about
just trying to get
anything that he's
home.
saying. Yeah. They're like, when he's doing call and response stuff, they're playing along, but
Yeah.
they do not care about this guy anymore because he was their leader 30 years ago. And like he's
Mm-hmm.
been trapped in the eighth dimension until recently, and they're all pretty comfortable in the new setup. And so he shows up and they're like,
We really don't want to be
we're
doing
not
this.
about that life anymore, man. We just want to go home. And it's one of those things where like in the novelization, it like gets into more of his character
Mm.
because he's an Italian scientist who gets possessed by an alien, but there's no real in the it doesn't that doesn't really play in the movie. Where in the novelization, like those two characters like have full on arguments with each other about like who's in
Mm-hmm.
control. Like it's like an all of me situation.
Mm-hmm.
Where but instead of Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin, it is an insane alien and an Italian physicist.
See, that sounds far more compelling. I will say at one point my mother said, now, why doesn't he change into an alien? Because everyone else is changing into an alien that was the
Right.
bad guy. And I was like, oh, well, because he's possessed. And she goes, I
Yeah.
didn't catch that at all. I'm like, oh,
Correct.
well,
It
when
is
he
not
was,
really
well, no, when his head was stuck through
when
the
he's halfway
wall,
through a wall,
when he
kicking
Winnie
his
the
little
Poohed
leggies.
through the, oh, bother, I seem to have gone
Oh,
into
bother.
the eighth dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he gets stuck, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'll say this. I think you can kind of get. I kind of intuited that. I kind of intuited that Buckaroo's parents probably died doing this thing. Maybe I had heard the plot before, but I kind of just was like, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. He clearly doesn't. Because if you were about to travel through matter, your parents would be there. His parents aren't there, ergo, you know. Then I
Right.
can't remember the
I mean, I forget how old Peter Weller
yeah.
is or how old he would have been in 1984, but I mean, he's like a whole ass adult. It's not like,
Well, yeah, I don't mean like they'd be watching out, but like you would invite your
but
parents
even,
there.
yeah,
And then also, I can't remember
especially because
the
there's so many like other observers. It is
yeah,
not like a secret experiment they're doing. It's like on television. And
precisely, yeah. And then
it's one of those things where so my friend John Lunger, who hates this movie, my co-host of the hopefully soon to return improvised Wikipedia podcast, he makes fun of me because the first time he tried to watch it and he told me that he really hated it, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it's bad, but it like I love it for the movie that it could be, like, and not even
mm,
just like the story. It's just like I it could be so great. Like it's
yeah,
one of those things where sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, you messed up, but like the last Thor movie,
sure.
uh and it's like, oh, this is bad, but you know, you could fix it. Like there's stuff you could
Mhm.
change that would make this pretty okay. And it's like not even big changes. Like the
Mhm.
Thor example is like, oh, you just put a couple scenes out of order. Like that's
Mhm.
you can fix this. You can take this movie that exists, drop it in Final Cut, and you have a better movie in a couple hours. Like you don't have
Topher
to
Grace
reshoot
over
nothing.
here.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
just like we see, uh, you see Jane become Thor and then she explains what happened to Thor 20 minutes later. And it's like, no,
Mhm.
when you just have her show up as Thor, and then
Yeah.
when Thor is like, the hell, that's
Oh,
when
what's
we see
going
what
on
happened.
here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like the part where it starts with the flashback to Christian Bale and his daughter on like the desert planet. Like, no, when he's talking to the kids in the cage, that's when I want to find out
Mm.
that part of it. And it's like with this, it would take more work to fix Buckaroo Banzai, but you could like.
Yeah, I think so.
It's one of those things where a lot of the times, if you tell somebody that like their favorite movie is getting rebooted or
Mhm.
remade, they
Mhm.
flip out. If you told me they
I
were
was just about to
redoing
ask.
this one, I'd be like, yeah, do it.
Who
Like,
who would
let's.
you want to play Buckaroo Banzai?
Uh, I've thought about it, and the problem is like he's half Japanese. Like
Mhm.
it is. It's one of those things where I do. The other reason I want to see it remade is because like this would fit in so well with uh like a give it a 2023 sensibility, like make him autistic on purpose, give him a diverse team, because
Mhm.
like the character has traveled the world assembling the Hong Kong Cavaliers, his like his team essentially. It's all white dudes, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, no, it wouldn't be. It would be from people from all over the world. And like
Mhm.
Buckaroo Banzai is heavily pulls from Buck Rogers,
Yeah.
which did like the 1940s cartoon version of that, where they're like he's got an Irish guy, he's got a German guy, and it's like just
Mhm.
all other white dudes, but they're doing like stereotypical accents, and like they just have lederhosen or whatever. Uh, and it's like, no, you can do like the actual version of that now, where it's like these are real people
Mhm.
with, actual backgrounds
Mhm.
uh and things about them. But there's also just inter-character stuff where some of this I got from the novel, and some of it was just like I assumed that is what they were going to do when they introduced different characters to each other. So Jeff Goldblum gets brought on. He plays Dr. Sidney Zweibel, who he tells everybody to call him New Jersey. And there's also Perfect Tommy, who is like Lewis Smith is the actor. He is visibly at least the youngest of the Hong
Mhm.
Kong Cavaliers. He built the jet car, which is they talk about it in the novel, but like that was his big contribution. So when they're doing the jet car experiment and everyone's like, Buckaroo, abort, you need to get out, and he's like, just be cool, she'll hold, because he built it. Like he
Mhm.
knows
Mhm.
the car's gonna be fine. um but so you have him, he is like the youngest kind of newish addition to the team, trying to find his place. And then right after this big experiment, Buckaroo just shows up with this other guy. So I'm like, well, there should be tension between
Yeah.
Perfect Tommy and New Jersey, because like New Jersey is used to being the new kid, and now there's this other guy. But then
And
also Rawhide is like Buckaroo's second in command. That's Clancy Brown. He gets
mhm.
killed, and it's like, well, now there's a power vacuum essentially.
Yeah.
So Perfect Tommy should ascend to that position by the end of the movie, and he doesn't. Like I forget, there's a line at the end that kind of implies that maybe that is what is going to happen.
Mhm.
But none of that is in the movie, and it's like it should be. It makes it more interesting when characters, have thoughts and feelings about one another,
And
rather than
express
just
them.
stand around and agree with what Buckaroo says. But
That's oh, going
yeah,
back briefly to the Ahsoka thing of like any interpersonal conflict makes the story more interesting. You can
yeah,
just sprinkle a little on top. There's
right.
that
Like
one
they,
scene with Jeff Goldblum where he's like, "Ooh, I know who you are. It's this," and there's like,
yeah,
"No, I'm that," and there's like a little bit of tension there, but not enough to
yeah.
like do anything with.
Right, that was it. Like, and I think from that scene, it's like, oh, these guys are gonna like ride the new guy, but they don't. There's like
No.
he's like, oh, where are your Spurs at? He's like, is he making fun of me? Yeah, he is. He's not gonna do it anymore after this scene. It's just the one passing glance, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, it is. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's there. You could pull a lot more, but I mean, some of it is W.D. Richter has talked about. Sidney Beckerman, the producer of the movie, was like really against them during the production.
Mm.
Um, so the thing that I stole for the special, there's the scene where it's Pepe Serna, who played Reno, and Jeff Goldblum are walking through the lab at the Bonsai Institute, and there's just a watermelon there. So Jeff Goldblum says, "Why is there a watermelon there?" And Reno says, "I'll tell you later." He doesn't. He doesn't tell him. It's never explained. The reason, I think they give it a reason in the book where it's like, oh, they were doing like research to, better farm and feed more people or whatever.
They
But the
were
real
growing a
reason,
Gallagher.
yeah, they were cloning Gallagher. The real reason, like the production reason, was uh, every day they would get notes from Sidney Beckerman about stuff he hated from the dailies from the day before. Like he hated Buckaroo's glasses. He's
The
like,
red
action
ones?
heroes don't wear glasses.
Oh, just the
Uh,
concept of him wearing glasses.
just the concept of him wearing
Eef.
glasses, and I guess the red ones specifically he didn't care for. I mean, I disagree. I don't have them on right now, but I like ran out and got a pair of
Yeah, they
roundish
look
red
dope as
glasses because I
hell.
was like,
Yeah.
yeah, those are rad. Um, but they were like constantly fighting about everything with this dude, and after a while they stopped getting those messages. So they're like, I don't think he's I don't think he's watching anymore. I think I think we're on our own. I think we can do whatever we want now. So the test was, let's do something we think he's gonna hate. Like, I don't know, just put a watermelon in the back. So they shot that as just like a what they're like, all right, we're gonna shoot this, and then tomorrow, if we get a memo from Sydney's office that says, hey, cut that watermelon thing out, then he's still paying attention. If he doesn't say anything, all bets are off. We can do whatever we want, and that is it might be apocryphal, but that is at least the story that I'd heard of it. And after hearing like interviews and stuff with W.D. Richter that he's done over the years, he still to this day insists that Buckaroo is a real guy, that this is a docudrama, as he calls it, that they have explicit permission from the real Banzai Institute to tell these stories. And it's like, but he's not, though. You know that, right? Like,
Wow, the commit to the bit.
you and your friend made him up. You know that's
Is
and
he
it's
okay?
after a while, it's like I think it might actually have been you guys that were hard to work with, not this
Mm.
producer. I think he might have had some valid criticisms, actually. And that the producer in question is long dead, so it's you can't even really relitigate it. But it's just like, it seems like you might be exhausting, actually.
Yeah.
Um, I've never gotten a chance to talk to either of them. I would love to,
Mm-hmm.
but also they didn't have like a huge career after this in Hollywood.
Hmm.
Um, W.D. Richter did go on to direct one other film that I believe is called Late to Dinner. It is bad
Hmm.
in not in like a charming bad way like Buckaroo is.
Mm-hmm.
It is just bad. It is two guys who like accidentally do a light bit of kidnapping in like the 60s,
Oh boy.
and then they get frozen by a scientist by accident and unthawed in the early 90s. Uh, and then the guy's like, well, I got to go find my wife. She's remarried, of course.
Yeah.
Uh, they they find his daughter, who's mad that her dad left. I think she's married to the kid that they kidnapped by accident.
Huh.
Uh, it's the pits. It does have an early appearance by
It's the
Janine
bits.
Garofalo, but it is just it's bad. It's not good. And it's on I watched it on YouTube, and the upload that I watched, sometimes the sound would just cut out for like
Cool.
3 or 4 minutes, but you don't feel like you're missing much when it happens. It's not like, well, now I'm not going to be able to follow this great story. It's bad. I don't like that one at all. And like I know I've pointed out Buckaroo's flaws, but I do genuinely love that movie. Like it
Yeah.
is uh it is not perfect, but you know,
It doesn't have
who
to be.
is?
I think, yeah. I think also I was thinking about this a while ago when we were talking about the reason it's so. I could absolutely understand why this is a movie to fall asleep to, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of it also because you mentioned the 18, because like the
Yeah.
second half feels like a series of vignettes. It feels like a series of episodes.
Yeah.
So you get into that same kind of rhythm where like I have a hard time falling asleep to a movie, but I'll fall asleep to TV all the time.
Sure.
And so that I think makes a lot of sense as to just like the pacing of the
There
picture, as it
was
were.
talk years ago of a series
They should do
uh
it. It'd be great.
that Kevin Smith was attached to it,
No.
and I this was before I found the movie, so like
Mm,
if you told me now that it was happening, I'd be thrilled. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. Um, I don't know that he's who I would pick to do this,
hmm
but I'm genuinely a fan. I know he is too. Like I trust his judgment with my favorite movie. He's made several of my other favorite movies, so like yeah, I wouldn't doubt him. But the rights are in question is kind of the thing
Mm,
where it's like it is unclear who has the rights
yes.
to do another Buckaroo Banzai film project. Um,
That Kevin
they
Smith.
just
hmm
2021 they published Against the World Crime League as a novel,
Oh, neat.
but it's not good.
It's not good.
No, it feels like
Oh
Earl
no.
Mac Crouch has just been writing it since 1984, uh,
Mm,
and it's very long. Um, I have pretty bad ADD, so like reading is a real challenge for me, like anything long. But
hmm
so I tried, and it's like I don't know, I'll circle back, and then they months later came out with the audiobook. It's like, oh,
hmm
perfect. I burn through audiobooks. All I do is
Yeah.
drive around the country going to a comedy club. I go through audiobooks constantly. It is a 24-hour audiobook.
Oh, that's worth every Audible credit.
Yeah, it's so long, but I also couldn't listen to it for very long at a clip because it made me mad that it wasn't better.
I'll say this about that. Um, Lord of the Rings, I've listened to a few times on audiobooks. Not as long. I don't think it's 24 hours. I think it's like 12 hours,
Yeah.
which is crazy. That's a long ass book.
I have the novelization
Mm-hmm.
of Across the Eighth Dimension. It's in the other room. I'm not going to get it. I would estimate that thick. I'm
Yeah,
holding
yeah.
my fingers up if anybody's just listening to the
Like,
audio, about an inch.
yeah,
Like
a paperback.
a regular
Yeah,
novel.
yeah, a
Like
normal book. Hey, Glenn. I've seen a book. Are you
yeah,
trying to
like
tell me that I haven't seen a book?
think of a book. Think of
You
a
know,
book. It's
are you
that thick.
trying to infer that I don't know what a book is?
Now, Against the World Crime League is like Bible thick.
Okay. She Bible thick. Got it.
Bible thick. And it is like you could hollow it out and hide a gun thick. It is a big boy. And it's it has every like think of your weird friends from 8th grade who like
Okay, I
were
was
just
homeschooled,
getting
so
into like all right, then when you were 13, what do you what do you want me to say? Like think of the kid at the community center or wherever you went. I don't, who like just found out about like JFK conspiracy theories
okay, sick.
and
So
really
it's
wanted
me.
to talk to you about like the Knights Templar.
Okay, okay.
If you asked that child to write a novel,
Oh boy.
I'm it's Earl McGrouch is a better writer than that kid, but it has all the same stuff.
You should put that as the review.
It's got every weird it's Knights Templars are in there. The
Oh
Pope is
boy.
obviously a secret bad guy. Uh
Yeah.
Buckaroo travels through time and space as he is wont to do, right? That is not out
Mm-hmm.
of the ordinary for this man. He does meet Jesus and Gandhi and Einstein,
Mm.
and they're like, "Oh, it's so great you're here. We've been waiting for you." And then right when you think, "Well, this clearly is just like a hallucination or something. This obviously isn't like meant to literally be happening. The next sentence in the book is, this is literally happening. It is. This is not a metaphor. He is standing with his friend Jesus Christ. And it's like, oh boy. Yeah. And it's like they do the thing you would expect them to do, which is they go to Planet 10, the place the Electroids are trying to get back to. Which like, yeah, but that happens so late. And it's like there's a whole other story with like the Vatican and this other group of aliens are basically doing the same thing from the first movie, where they're like, oh, we'll just start, we'll make the countries of Earth think they're warring with each other, and then they just show up over the Vatican, like while Buckaroo is playing a concert there. And it's like it's too much. It's too much stuff.
That's too much.
Did you read Wonder Boys or see the movie, the Michael Chabon? There's for any listeners who have so there's a part where Michael Douglas's character is a writing professor, and he had like a well-regarded novel, and he has not published anything in a long time, and he's been like working on his follow-up forever, and it's so long, and his student is Katie Holmes, and at one point she, like, without his permission, gets and reads the manuscript, and it sucks. And she's like, I think the line she says is like, you teach us that writing is about making choices. This feels like you didn't make any choices. And it's like, same criticism for Against the World Crime League, is it's just every weird idea that this guy wanted to put into a story. He's like, now's my chance. If I don't do it now, when am I going to get it in there? Every weird thing's got to go in. It has to be 800 pages long. It's the only way to tell this story. I'm like, it does it though? Like,
it's definitely giving Stephen King. I would say two things. One, the Kevin Smith Buckaroo, that's from 2016. So I'm assuming that is not happening anymore.
No, once it became clear that the rights were kind of like in question, he backed away. He's like, well, no, like, figure it out and then call me. He's like, I would love to do it, but if you guys don't even have the rights, why are we having meetings about it?
Yeah. The people also ask from this Google search, is Buckaroo Banzai Marvel or DC?
Marvel published the comic version of the movie.
What is the point of Buckaroo Banzai?
I don't know that I have an answer for that one.
Who streams Buckaroo Banzai movie?
Changes,
Tubi.
Changes month to month.
And finally, is Buckaroo Banzai worth watching?
Yeah, absolutely, no question. Yeah, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I definitely enjoyed myself, and it's definitely, I think, will get slotted into the rotation of like, yeah, this is a very comforting movie. I think the music was really good too in it as well.
Yeah.
Very.
God, I'm blanking on the composer's name.
But yeah, I had a hell of a time.
But they do. It's the Banzai March was like created for the movie. It plays a couple times throughout. It's the thing that they're like dance walking to over the credits. But when they filmed that, they didn't have like the actual music done, so they just did it to Billy Joel's Uptown Girl.
Hell yeah.
So it's great. It's a beautiful mess of a movie. I did hire I hired a composer to do like a sound alike. So the music in Glen Tickle Against the World Crime League, I just sent this kid the Banzai March, was like, can you make something that sounds like this, like a little bit? And he sent the song that I ended up using, which I did call the Glen Tickle March because I'm a narcissist, but it was just like
to have your own march.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where there's a lot of little things in my special that I don't think anyone is going to notice or care about, except for the people who do notice them, and those people will care about them a lot. I have, just through talking about it online so much, I have found a handful of other Buckaroo Banzai fans. And I'm like, oh yeah, my new internet friend Jim, he's gonna love it. He's gonna love it when he sees the lapel pin of the Bonsai Institute on uh on my blazer, which I tried to match the one that Buckaroo is wearing in the concert scene that I love so much. Um, the way, like, I had Laura High introduce me as New Jersey's own Glen Tickle, because that's how Buckaroo gets introduced at the concert. And that was a fun conversation. So Laura High and Dave Colombo, two other New York comedians, uh, shot the special, and they also opened it. So we were having like day of conversations of like how I wanted things to come out and look and stuff. And so it did end up devolving into me just showing them the concert scene from Buckaroo Banzai, because so much of it was like, so Dave follows me, he's holding the camera, follows me up to the stage, because again, that's what happens in the scene. I brought a separate light and threw that in the back of the room to shoot up on the stage, because when Buckaroo shuts the concert down, there's like the audience is backlit, so I wanted like that look. And so much of it was like, I understand that this is dumb. Like, you asked me a pretty serious, like, normal production question. And I'm like, well, in the 1984 classic, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, they did it this way. And I have, like, some of the comments are people like realizing the various Buckaroo Banzai like nods. And it is like I said, I would have loved to do an hour of material on it, but there's no way to make that work short of hosting a screening where everyone watches the movie and then sticks around to hear me talk about it for an hour. And it's like, I feel like those tickets are going to be hard to move, you know?
They might be. They might be indeed. Guy Montgomery in New Zealand was doing this thing kind of in the inverse of that, which he would write stand-up about a film he had never seen before.
Okay.
And then he would do like 10 minutes of stand-up, and then they would all watch the movie together to see if he was right, basically.
Nice.
Which is very good. But yeah, I mean, I think you're doing a pretty good job of talking for an hour about Buckaroo Banzai and making it funny. So, I mean,
I try. I might do. I haven't recorded it yet, but it's on my list of stuff I want to do. Of like, I'll just do a director's commentary for it.
Oh, you absolutely should.
And it's one of the where it's like, I would do it. I'll probably do it either way, but I would love it if I could get W.D. Richter and Earl Mac Rauch to agree. I'm like, I will record a director's commentary for Buckaroo Banzai if the two of you record a director's commentary for my comedy special. And I have no way of contacting these men. I don't know if they would be interested in that deal. It seems to only benefit me and not them in any way.
IMDb Pro. You can find their reps. Are you kidding me?
We'll see.
What an opportunity. If anything, Glenn, turning into Carrie Fisher, if anything, Glenn, you should send them the link just to see their impact.
I should, just because it's like, I have, I don't have like a huge following or anything, but the times that people have reached out to like tell me that a thing that I've made has meant something to them, it feels nice, right?
It does,
so like, it feels bad if then they tell me that, and then I go and I listen to like a dozen podcast appearances that person did, and they're talking about the thing that I made, and half of it is them saying all the bad things about it. But I don't know. Maybe somebody has shown it to them. I don't know if we have any mutual friends, Earl or WD, but I don't know. I did back when Twitter wasn't the nightmare hellscape that it is today. I did this was like shortly after seeing the movie. I was and like realizing, I was like, it is kind of a mess. Like, you know what? Hire me to rewrite. Hire me to write the remake of this movie. And then Hodgman just replied, "Get in line." And it's like, because it's basically, it's like me, John Hodgman, and Ken Plume are like the three guys really holding a torch for this movie.
Dude, that absolutely tracks.
Yeah.
Esteemed company. That's so good. Well, and I mean this with love in my heart. I hope Ken and John die so you get to do it,
I mean, they're older than me, so just maybe. I mean, I'm not in
Yeah.
great health, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see who
Yeah.
comes out on
Could you
top.
imagine if they were like some sort of contest, like a Willy Wonka style,
It's
like
just,
one of you three will
it is
be.
like a tontine, but instead of insurance money, you get the rights to Buckaroo Banzai. I'll sign that deal, John, Ken, if you're listening. Yeah, absolutely. Last
Mhm.
Man Standing gets to remake this movie.
Excellent. I have this idea. You just like you used to put a hand on a car just to win it. Just hand on the rights. Whoever
We're just
moved.
holding Peter Weller, and
Yeah.
he's annoyed. He did an appearance at, I think it was Fan Expo Boston,
Mm.
and he like started it by saying, he's like, please don't ask me about RoboCop. I don't want to talk about RoboCop. Uh, he's like, that movie came
Mhm.
out a long time ago. I have a rich, interesting life that I would love to talk to you about. I've already answered how much the suit weighed. A lot. It was uncomfortable. Please ask me about anything else. And then people kept wanting to ask him about RoboCop, and
Oh,
he
that
got like super
sucks.
pissed. And it's
Yeah.
like, and I side with him genuinely of
Yeah.
like, give the man a break. He doesn't want to talk about the thing he gets asked about all the time. But also, my guy, you are at Fan Expo, an
That is
event
also true.
of people who just want to ask you about RoboCop. He's like, I knew Miles Davis, like
See,
I,
that's
I have a
that's
doctorate, like I have a master's in art history. Like, can we talk about something other than RoboCop? And it's like, yeah, man, I would love to talk to you a little bit about Miles Davis, but then a whole lot about Buckaroo Banzai, actually.
oh
But
yeah,
yeah, I don't care
yeah.
about RoboCop. It's not. It's
Ah,
that movie doesn't really move the needle for me.
I'll say this: I really empathize with actors that have that situation. Like, I watched Bridge on the River Kwai for the first time this year, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh, that's why Alec Guinness was the way he was." I would be pissed too. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
this is an incredible performance,
right.
and
And
no
everyone's
one
like,
cares.
"Oh, what about lightsabers, though?" It's like, God, guys,
I really
I'm a
don't
real
want
actor.
to talk about that.
Yeah.
Um, Glenn, it's been about an hour's up. So I'd say, I mean, I'm sure you have more to talk about how much you love
Always.
Buckaroo Banzai, but for my own sanity, I feel like
Yeah,
I
no one
might.
wants to I've done so many podcast appearances in the past couple of weeks to promote the special, and on
Mhm.
so many of them it's just devolved into me talking about Buckaroo Banzai.
Well, admittedly, the special is Buckaroo Banzai themed, so like it's kind of
Yes.
that'd be like
Visually, at least. If I just want to be clear, if anybody's listening, like, well, I don't
yeah,
want to hear a bunch of jokes about Buckaroo Banzai. There aren't any. There is
no.
I do the watermelon thing up front, and then there's a reference to it that I like
Mm-hmm.
hid in a different joke. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that that one I did have like two people so far catch the Buckaroo Banzai reference
Mm-hmm.
in one of the jokes, and they're like, "Man, it's I say a name at one point and it's a character from the movie," and they're like, "I looked that up and I knew it was gonna be some Buckaroo Banzai shit, but." it's,
Oh, that's so good.
it's like the second I heard you say a name that I didn't recognize, I'm like, oh, I should look who that is. Actually, I probably shouldn't because it's just gonna be somebody from Buckaroo Banzai. It's like, yeah, that's fair.
Well, fair enough. Um, is there anything you want people who have listened thus far to know besides you got a new special out?
I
It's very
do.
funny. I have seen it. It's very good. You did a good
Thank you,
job.
friend. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. It's
Uh,
pretty darn good.
yeah, if they want to watch that or anything else that I've done, if you go to my YouTube channel, that is there. You can watch Tristan introduced me on Good Grief, my other
It's true.
special.
My one
Um,
Amazon credit. Thank you.
my my it's not even really a special. It is just like my one friend brought a camera to my first album recording.
Mm-hmm.
That video has kind of started popping off again after the release of the special um
Interesting. That's good.
on YouTube,
Yeah.
and it's like it's it's just one camera for an hour, so it seems like it would be exhausting to watch all of, but people are doing it. So I mean, I'm glad. I'm not saying don't, but maybe just listen to the audio. Like just put it on in the background while you fold laundry. For that
Um,
one is Yes Really was my first album.
would you take it offense as someone who makes art that someone falls asleep to your art?
No, I mean if they did it while driving, I would be
Yeah, that would be
upset
an
with
issue.
them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
good.
if you asked me that a couple of years ago, I would say maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or maybe not, because like before I got into comedy, I went to school. I was trying to be a filmmaker,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean I have films that I've made, but that's not the
Mm-hmm.
point. It is so like I've done this thing where I will like latch onto a movie and I fall asleep to that movie most nights, months at a time, like
Mm-hmm.
from middle school on. Like the second I had a VCR in my room, like this became a habit. And I think I've been falling asleep to other people's work for so long that I have to be a real knob to be like, hey, no, don't do that. I think it's probably harder to fall asleep to stand up than other art
Yeah,
forms. Um,
probably.
like I will put stand up if I'm like driving and I'm starting to get a little sleepy, but I still got miles to go. I will
Mm,
throw on a stand up album, not my own usually, but because it's like, well, no, like it's not. There's not like a narrative point where you can kind of drift off. It is,
yeah.
uh, at least to me, a stand up comedian, like one of the more engaging things to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where like I've been getting real into like jazz and bebop lately.
Oh
I will
yeah.
fall asleep to that with no hesitation, and it's not because I don't enjoy it. It is just like it doesn't engage my brain the same way
Mm-hmm.
as hearing jokes does. But I can listen to Kenny Dorham play trumpet and just drift off to sleep and be like, yeah, this is just so chill.
Yeah, that's good. I would also say that like I don't know, this whole time it's you started really picking up. It's been raining. I don't know if anyone who's listening has picked up on that, but I would also say comedy stand-up inherently has tension and release. So you are like
Yeah.
prime. You're in anticipation of the whole thing. So it's really
I
hard
don't
to
know if
find the point.
yeah, I don't know if everyone does this, but like if I'm listening to another comedian, I am thinking about it as like, all right, if I am telling this joke, where does this joke go next? Um,
Mm,
and for me, it is like a reference to Jurassic Park or
mhm.
an Australian bird fight. But it is the thing I enjoy most is when I am wrong. Like if I'm listening to
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
tell a
yeah.
joke and I'm like, oh, they're gonna say this, and then they don't. When they say something
Hmm.
else, it's like, good job.
It's
Like,
yeah. These hills sing. Yeah.
yeah,
Um. Well, I want to thank you for doing this podcast, and I want to
anytime.
thank the listener because if you're listening to this, this probably means you're throwing me some bones, and so I appreciate you doing that. And I hope that this conversation has lulled. So the reason I asked about the art thing, I hope this conversation has lulled the person listening to sleep. I hope they have a nice time. It's
I hope so too.
yeah,
There's a couple podcasts that are by design meant to be
yeah,
fall to sleep to
yeah.
that I've been putting on.
Same.
One that I genuinely thought was a joke for years. Like I didn't think it was
Mm,
a real thing. And then when I found out it was, I'm getting caught up and it's like, yeah, I love listening to the first 5 minutes of this and then never to the rest of it. Or I will
um,
like go back to one I know I listened to months ago.
mhm.
Uh, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's a chill way to fall asleep.
it is. I've been listening to a lot of The Empty Bowl, Justin
That's the one
McElroy's.
I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
what I
didn't
kind of thought
necessarily
it
want to
was.
plug another sleep
Oh,
podcast
it's fine. Don't
on
worry
your
about
sleep
it.
podcast.
Well,
But yeah, like
we'll see
he's
how this
mentioned
turns out.
it. I always thought it was a bit like when they were
Yeah.
doing plugs at the end of an episode
No,
because it's
it's
like such a silly premise.
It
That's like,
really
oh
is.
no, that one's just a joke. They don't really have a sleep podcast about cereal, but they do,
They
and it's
do,
excellent.
and it's great. And I've been listening to Joe Pera's new
His
sleep
new
pod.
special is great.
Oh, so good.
I did have the problem of I put it on pretty late, and he is so
Mm.
chill that it was kind of like lulling me to sleep a
Oh,
little bit.
yeah. I
Not because
love
it's boring, but that is like his whole brand.
his
Is
whole
he
thing.
has a show called Joe Pera Talks You to Sleep or whatever? I
Yeah,
forget the
yeah.
actual.
Joe Pera talks you to sleep, and then he has the sleep podcast as well. And it's one of those things with him. I really love his new special, not just because it's very funny and very good, but also because his TV show got canceled. So
Yeah,
he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go on tour," and then from that, this came, and I'm like, "That's such a lovely um, I don't know, just like a lovely silver lining sort of thing, you know?"
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good. I watched it the night it came out, and I like
Mhm.
him so much it doesn't even bother me that his special has so many more views than mine.
He's yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. But it's a good special. You should watch that. You should watch Glenn's special. Watch more comedy on YouTube specifically because that's where comedians are releasing their stuff
That is where
actually.
a lot of comedy's coming out lately.
Yeah,
And
and
like
I
when I
think
made the decision, it was like I have a dry bar special that's on their like app and you can
hmm
stream it a couple places, but like it's got a million views on YouTube. And it's like, well,
yeah,
if people are just gonna watch it on YouTube, why don't I just
put it on
I have a
YouTube.
YouTube account. Why
Yeah,
don't I just put it there myself?
yeah,
And
and you did.
it's been going, it's been about a month since it came out,
hmm
a little less at the time of this recording, but I'm like, I don't know, seems like that was the way to go, actually. Like it seems to be going about as well as I expected it to.
Good. Well, thanks again for doing this. I
Thanks for
appreciate
having me, bud.
you. Yeah, talking about your favorite movie.